When the pandemic hit in 2020, millions of Americans found themselves out of work. Congress responded with new unemployment insurance benefits. But a new report finds a substantial amount of the money paid out went to fraudsters. Seto Bagdoyan is a director at the Government Accountability Office. Seto, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
So how much money was paid out and how much of those payments were actually fraudulent?
Yes, that is a complex question with a complex answer. There are various estimates out there. In fact, the Comptroller General yesterday testified before the House Ways and Means Committee about this very subject. And at that hearing, there was also the Inspector General of the Department of Labor, and he announced a new figure of $191 billion in improper payments, which include fraud. And we also have a baseline estimate of over $60 billion in fraudulent payments. So there are competing numbers out there. We believe our baseline number is a starting point to measure the fraud in unemployment insurance programs.
And what are some of the ways that people were getting those fraudulent payments? How did they do it?
Yes, sure. Well, we're talking about a lot of different fraud schemes. Many were centered around identity theft. For example, there was one individual who stole an identity and I believe a related social security number, and then proceeded to file claims in dozens of states, calculating hundreds of thousands of dollars in improper benefits. So that is probably the primary reason or the primary method that fraudsters use to obtain benefits.
And what do we know about who was exploiting the system? Who were these fraudsters? Were they just people that were criminals anyway? Was it organized crime?
Yes. Once the vast amounts of money were made available for unemployment insurance, that amount of money, of course, attracted solo practitioners, as well as organized criminal enterprises, both domestic and overseas. So it was basically an onslaught to get a piece of the pie.
So there was an overseas element as well?
Yes, that's our understanding. We haven't looked at that in any depth, but we have read other reporting to that effect. And yes, organized crime syndicates from Russia, China, Nigeria apparently have been prominent in that regard.
So the speed at which the payments needed to go out during the pandemic obviously didn't help. So what were some of the changes made to help get payments out faster that actually ended up making things easier for fraudsters?
Great question. Primarily switching off or relaxing controls such as they were at the time that were part of the claims process to verify applicants' identity, establish eligibility, calculate amounts of the benefits, and then also determine the duration of those benefits. So it's primarily a controls issue. If you relax those controls, inevitably you're courting trouble.
And it wasn't entirely a federal issue because states also weren't prepared. What were some of the issues that they faced?
That's right, yes. The states, this is unemployment insurance is a federal-state partnership. The insurance part of it is executed at the state level. And as you indicated, the states were as unprepared as the Department of Labor was. The onslaught of claims in the tens of millions, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, basically overwhelmed their systems. A lot of these states operate with antiquated IT infrastructures that some date back into the 1970s and using COBOL programming language. So it's basically a recipe for disaster, perfect storm. You pick your cliche, it really applies in this case.
And GAO had recommended to the Department of Labor some anti-fraud best practices years before the pandemic. What were some of those best practices?
Well, we recommended best practices in our October report, October 2021, to implement elements of GAO's fraud risk framework, which is a compilation of leading practices to more effectively manage fraud risk. That is a legislative requirement dating back to 2016, with the Office of Management and Budget providing guidance to that effect. But when we did our work for the October 2021 report, we found that labor had not yet implemented any of the fundamentals of that framework. So we made recommendations to that effect. That's going on about 16 months ago now. And labor is moving in the right direction. They're taking some steps, but they probably need to pick up the pace and implement those recommendations more rapidly to be better prepared the next time.
And are there any other recommendations that are in front of the Department of Labor that you think would address fraud?
Yes, in our most recent report from December of last year that was released earlier or late January rather, we made the additional recommendation that once labor responded to our October 2021 recommendations, they should build on the information they gather from that set of recommendations and craft and implement an anti-fraud strategy, which will be essentially their roadmap to better manage fraud risks in the future.
All right. Well, Seto, we appreciate you guys looking into this and appreciate you being on the program. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Have a good day.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and hit the subscribe button to be the first to watch our latest content. Full shows and more are available on our website at govmatters.tv.